long story short, I had a near-death experience one night where I literally left my body. And because I wasn't raised in a religious tradition where you go to this angry gray-haired man throwing bolts down from, I went into the depths of outer space and went into a state of cosmic consciousness where the awake mind within me was this perfectly still, beautiful, and infinite state of mind. And yet I was still aware of the cosmos. And at that point, two very enlightened beings approached me. And I was not in a body that looked like a physical body, I was just like a point of light. And so were they. And I had an extraordinary metaphysical experience, which defied everything I was raised to believe, with a God-type experience, God consciousness experience. And I went into a state of consciousness where there was this connection with these beings, where there was all kinds of knowledge and information conveyed non-verbally. It's like, if I say the word apple, it says apple. And inside that word, you can see visually in your sort of mind's eye, or astral world, if you will, the apple. This was even pre-visual. It was like the causal level. And there was this kind of experience, and it seemed to go on for an eternity, because there's no sense of marking time in that state of consciousness. And I ultimately had a profound state of sort of oneness consciousness, where I saw the entire cosmos as an awake thing. Everything in it was consciousness, phasing and resonating as a star or what have you. Eventually, these two enlightened beings, these sort of twin, powerful, almost like avatar type beings, said, well, you may come with us or go back to Earth. And I said, well, I had enough presence of mind to say, well, what is your will? I mean, what should I do? And I'm a 17-year-old boy who was raised as totally an atheist. We were Unitarians, but we didn't believe in anything. And they said, well, we would like for you to go back to Earth to work on what you can do for Earth. And with that, I became very depressed, to be honest with you. I had no interest in coming. After that experience, I had no interest in being back. But I said, okay. And with that, I sort of fell back into my body. And after that, there's a whole lot to this that I don't know if I need to go into, but I was sort of tested to see if my will to live. And I was almost drawn out of my body several times and eventually nailed it and stayed there. And after that, I was spontaneously healed. I know I had hepatorenal syndrome and renal failure because my skeletal muscle was so damaged, my urine had become the color of Coca-Cola. I mean, I was very sick. But I never did see a doctor, and after that, got fine. And I then became very interested in exploring higher states of consciousness. It was October of '73, and it was in the Southwest. I saw this same ship that I'd seen when I was 8 or 9. And I looked at it, and I felt this immediate connection to it and thought, oh, well, they're back. And I didn't think a whole lot more about it, and it kind of just winked out again, vanished. So I sat and meditated there on the top of this mountain and some rocks, a little over 5,000 feet overlooking the valley. And when I finished, it had gotten dark. I had this really beautiful, deep meditation. And it was crystal clear air up at that altitude in October. It was very chilly. I had a ski jacket on. And at the end of it, I stood up and I looked at the sky, and a thought that wasn't my own entered me and said, behold what a beautiful universe God has made. And with that, I went, as that thought ended, I went into exactly the same state of consciousness I was in when I had my near-death experience. Well, a few minutes later, I realized there was a glowing right below the crest of the mountain. And then I realized there was this animal, what I thought was an animal, nearby. Well, being young and I kind of got on the ground. I hate to admit this now, sort of in the fetal position, sort of like, what is this? And it had this beautiful almond-shaped eye, like deer eyes. But it was an extraterrestrial biological life form. And he came up to me and touched me on my right shoulder. And whatever happened, the electromagnetic effect of it, all my hair, I had more hair then, stood on end completely. And I was totally electromagnetized. And subsequently, we went from there, and in an instant, went on board this craft. And what happened after that is sort of metaphysical in the sense that we seem to dematerialize and then appear out in space. And I was sitting with these other extraterrestrial beings in a meditative state. And people say, well, what were they saying? I said, it wasn't about saying, it was about being. But what we did was that I was teaching them what it was like for a young man, to be in cosmic consciousness as a human. And then that's where we met. We met in that state of cosmic consciousness. And then we created what's known as the CE5 protocols, the Close Encounters of the Fifth Kind protocols. That's where they came from. And basically I began to practice this ability with them to see them in the mind's eye and then vector them to a location and have an encounter. And they told me that at some point this would be very important to know how to teach other people.